I'm here to talk with people right now in Iowa. I keep doing it all across the country because I'm not running a campaign where I have to spend time sucking up to billionaires. I actually spend time doing town halls. Today is my 170th town hall. We've taken thousands of unfiltered questions, and we're well over 80,000 selfies right now. This is a person-to-person campaign because I think that's what democracy should be.
Senator Elizabeth Warren making note of her own selfie count. I like that. But reacting to new poll numbers that show a 50% decline in her support in 1 month. According to the latest Quinnipiac poll of Democratic primary voters, former Vice President Joe Biden regains the top spot at 24%. Mayor Pete Buttigieg rises to second place, and Warren plunges 14 points to land in third. Senator Bernie Sanders fills out the top four at 13%. And joining the conversation right now is Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC and president of the National Action Network. And Rev, great to see you as always.
Good to see
Joe
you.
Biden. Right on. Joe Biden's leading the pack, same as it ever was. It reminds me of something that former President Obama said a couple of weeks ago at a private dinner. He said, Americans don't want to remake the system. They don't want a revolutionary overhaul. What they want is a candidate who will vow to improve the system. I'm paraphrasing, but basically he was staking the claim, saying that a moderate should be the one that Democrats pick. And apparently, former President Obama was speaking to the pulse of the most Democratic voters.
Well, I think you clearly would see from these poll results that those that are considered the moderates or the centrist Democrats are the one right now that are gaining traction, and that would be Joe Biden and even Buttigieg, who, according to this Quinnipiac poll, has began rising even more. So clearly, I think that President Obama, to no surprise, has his hand on the pulse of a lot of voters, because I think that many are concerned, A, that the system be corrected, and B, that they are in a position to defeat Donald Trump. So even those that may be more left or more left-leaning still don't want to go too far that they feel that they would in some way risk the general election. And I think that's basically what we're seeing this particular poll reflect.
Doug, what's happening to Elizabeth Warren's campaign? Granted, a poll is a snapshot in time,
sure.
But for the sake of this conversation, let's just game it out.
Yeah.
Is Pete Buttigieg eating into her standing?
Well, what happened is she faced scrutiny for the first time in this campaign in a way that she hasn't faced since before she got in the race and was dealing with the issues related to her DNA. And I think that her opponents were successful in generating questions about her Medicare for All plan, how she would pay for it, whether taxes would go up on the middle class, private insurance, the price tag. And that had an impact, clearly. I think the dynamic we're seeing from a polling standpoint right now is that you have two frontrunners. You have Mayor Pete in the early states in Iowa and New Hampshire, and then you have Joe Biden nationally. And if you forecast this race down the line, that is very good for Joe Biden because he is the only one in this race right now who actually has support of people of color. Yeah. And you are not going to win this nomination unless you have African Americans and Hispanics supporting you. And so Pete is doing well in New Hampshire and Iowa, but look at South Carolina. He is not doing well there. You look at Super Tuesday states where a significant chunk of delegates are going to be coming up. A significant number of black voters are going to be coming out, and he's not doing well in those states.
Hey, Rev, let's talk about Mayor Mike Bloomberg's campaign, because even Democrats who don't necessarily want him to be their nominee, the fact that he is mounting a campaign that basically makes an end run around Iowa and New Hampshire, there are Democrats who say that is a good thing, because every time this comes up, every 4 years, you hear people say, why is it that Iowa and New Hampshire, these two small states that aren't representative of the Democratic Party and certainly aren't representative of the country writ large, why do they have an outsized influence?
Going around Iowa and New Hampshire is a good thing for those of us that have always argued that you are giving an undue kind of jump start to states that do not reflect the diversity of what the base of the Democratic Party needs. And it really is offensive to many that say that we have to deal with a momentum that is established outside of states that really represent or reflect many of our communities that are expected to do the huge turnouts when the whole season of primaries are over. In that regard, I think is good. I think the challenge is that Bloomberg will have to face in even the later states some of his own baggage in some of those diverse communities. And that's going to be his challenge. Because even in Super Tuesday, you have many states that have large black populations, large brown populations that are not going to sit well with the background of stop and frisk. And it will take more than one speech to erase that or be given some kind of forgiveness for that.
Yeah. Alexa, you've been out in these critical states. What are people telling you?
What's interesting about South Carolina, and to Doug's point, is that Joe Biden certainly has, I think it's, 40% support among black voters. The polling is tricky to do, but the fact remains that he's been leading this entire time. When you dig into the numbers, you see that that's actually older black voters. I think the big question is whoever could capture black millennials, one, whoever that is, that's a question. But two, is that significant enough to help push them to an equal level as Joe Biden, given his support with older black voters? Will young black voters turn out at the same level as older black voters? Probably not, based on the history that we've seen of millennials and their voting patterns. But when I talk to folks in South Carolina, Democrats, folks on campaigns, organizers, voters, they talk a lot about how Senators Kamala Harris and Cory Booker have the best ground game in South Carolina and how it perplexes them that they're not catching on in a place like that, given their ground game there. But they also talk about how while Biden has a commanding lead among black voters, they get the sense that voters are movable there and that he might have a stronghold on South Carolina right now, but that's only up until this point, and that could change. And that's even coming from Democratic strategists who have been complimentary of Joe Biden.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.